Welcome to the second episode of the Pirate Rugby Pod. And I just want to start off by saying thanks so much to the incredible reaction that we've had to episode one. To be honest, we were blown away. And we also want to say hello to our amazing subscribers and followers on Twitter and, of course, on YouTube and Spotify.
Before we kick off, just want to promote a couple of things to you guys. So if you are listening on Spotify, if you could please leave us a review and a nice comment. You've heard it from 1,000 podcasts. You're hearing it from us now. It really does make a huge difference in us being able to reach more people. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you comment down below, I promise we will reply to every single comment that is left. And we really think that we've got an opportunity to grow on that platform. So every bit of love that you can show us on there, we massively appreciate it. And the final thing is we've got a Substack. So for those of you who don't know Substack, it's like a website that isn't quite a website. It's halfway between a website and a blog, really. If you go on there, there'll be a link to it in the description below this video. There'll also be a link to it on the Pirate Rugby Twitter. If you go over there and give us a follow, you'll get updates from us on there. All of the deep dives and all of the content and things that we put out, whether it's Ender or myself separately or as the Pirate Rugby podcast, you will find on our Substack. And if you sign up and subscribe, it's completely free. All you do is you put your email address in. And if you do that, you'll get an email every time we put a new bit of content out. We'll have deep dives, we'll have TV guides, we'll have episodes of this podcast, and we'll also have highlights from all of the weekend's rugby action. You do not want to miss it. So head over there and subscribe for us. Thanks very much.
So, Hugh, tell me about your rugby moment of the week.
My rugby moment of the week this week is a bit more serious than last week, I'm afraid. No seagulls, no storks, no birds of any kind involved in rugby matches this week. But my moment was Lee Halfpenny getting his 100th cap for Wales. So Lee Halfpenny has been pretty much my favourite rugby player since he got his first. Well, the first time I remember seeing him was Wales versus Canada. I want to say 2008. It might have been 2009 in the yellow kit, and there was this skinny little kid on the wing scoring tries. I thought I was quite new to rugby at that point, and I thought I want to follow this guy. And I followed his entire career, going from being a winger at Cardiff Blues, as they were at the time, getting capped for Wales. He nearly came out of the Wales team, nearly lost his place. In 2011 World Cup, he got moved to fullback for one game, and the rest was history. He became one of the best players in the world. He's arguably Wales's greatest ever fullback. I think I would argue that. He's got a trophy cabinet that would make people blush. 95% of other rugby players blush. And to be there for me personally, to see him get his 100th cap and give him a standing ovation as he came on the pitch was pretty special for me. And I think he might not make the World Cup, sadly, but I think he's an absolute legend of Welsh rugby and rugby as a whole. So that was pretty special for me. How about you, mate? What was your moment of the week?
For me, it's an interesting one. So we saw the TMO bunker in action with Scotland in the Scottish game. So for me, to be honest, that was my favourite moment, just the way that whole situation was handled by Ben O'Keefe. We've all seen the replays. It was a clear red, but thankfully we didn't see a ton of replays during the actual game. And the ref made a pretty quick decision, gave Xander Ferguson a yellow. He went off, and then obviously the TMO in their bunker made this correct decision, upgraded to a red card, and he was sent off. So for me, it was the correct decision. It was just great that there wasn't that much controversy around the whole decision. It was everyone, I would imagine, watching the game would agree there's bare minimum a yellow. And then obviously the TMO was given, I believe it's 8 minutes to make that decision, and it was thankfully upgraded. And for me, it's yet another example of a red card simply not ruining games. Guess who went on to win that game? Scotland did. Like I'm forever listening to people tell me that red cards ruin games. They simply don't. And in my opinion, yeah. And if somebody commits an act of foul play like that, your team deserves to be down to 14 to 13 or whatever.
If it's a red card, it's a red card. Let's not change what a red card is just because people are getting them. If it's a red card offence, it's a red card offence. It's a good referee for it to happen to as well, because obviously Ben O'Keefe's a Super Rugby ref, and they've had this all season, so he's really experienced with it. I don't know whether he had a moment of dread, because I don't know if it was the final or the semi-final of Super Rugby, he had a controversial one. It was early on, wasn't it, where the Crusaders player, I think it was, absolutely smashed a Chiefs player in the face. Ben O'Keefe followed the process perfectly, but his TMO unfortunately didn't upgrade it to a red, which most people believe it should have been. It wasn't Ben O'Keefe's fault. So it was good to see that he had the courage of his convictions to keep using the process. So I'm interested to see, is it confirmed this rule is going to be used in the World Cup?
It is indeed, yeah.
Okay.
So there were some rumors that the 20-minute red card was going to be introduced, but that's been quashed
We
by
hate that.
World Rugby. I think, yeah. I don't know who wants this, to be honest, but yeah, thankfully it's not going to be in place.
I think it's a Sanzar thing. They seem to take head contact less seriously down there, unfortunately. So you see that in the citations that get given out, i.e., you don't get cited, and you see that in the 20-minute red card, which was only supposed to be a trial, but it's into its third season down there now. Get rid of it, I say.
I think we're going to see in this World Cup a lot of red cards, aren't we? There's certainly going to be a lot. And it'll be interesting to see how the refs, but hopefully with the TMO bunker, it will, take the pressure off the refs. Like referring back to that Super Rugby final, I think that was within the first couple of minutes of that game that Ben O'Keefe had to make that decision on the TMO. So at least that pressure will be off. And I think 8 minutes is the perfect amount of time as well. So that obviously if the player's been yellow carded as well, that they have enough time to make that decision before the player's allowed to come back on. Of course, we are going to see a controversial, like, we'll somehow, I'm sure, see it, TMO in the bunker get it wrong. But thankfully, it won't take away from the actual spectacle of the game. We won't be watching a million replays. So moving on to the big rugby news of the week. Hugh, I see from Twitter that you were in Cardiff. How was your experience?
I was in Cardiff. I was very, very fortunate to receive a couple of tickets. So me and the missus went to see Wales versus England. It's my first time seeing England live, actually. My first Wales versus England game. It was absolutely Baltic in Cardiff, I can tell you. They call it the summer series. I don't know what it was, but it weren't summer. It was. We were walking down towards the stadium, and the wind was blowing, and it would. I was wearing my hat. My hat nearly came off. I was wrapped up in a waterproof. We got inside somewhere, and we sat down for a moment to recover. My ears were stinging. It was that cold. Like it was more like October than August. Oh my god. But once we got in there, I loved the stadium, the currently called Principality Stadium in Wales. It's such an awesome stadium. It kicks Twickenham out of the. Anyway, and we had great seats. Got to watch the game. They had the fire show, which they didn't really catch on the TV, unfortunately. In the stadium, it was amazing. They had the rock music going and all the flames kicking off. It was awesome. They had Josh Navidi doing the DJing, and then get to see the game. My first Wales England game. I wasn't that pumped for the game as a concept to begin with, but then once I got in there and I could see the England fans in their white jerseys, I'm thinking, can't lose this. It's still Wales versus England. I saw some people moaning about it online. Rugby is one of those sports which is a lot better in person, I think. So it was a great spectacle. Obviously, really happy to get the result. From me, I know we spoke about this previously, mate. I was expecting it to be. It's a pre-season friendly, so it's people getting up to speed. So I was hoping to see the new guys who came into the Wales team perform well. I don't think any of them set the world alight, but I wouldn't expect them to on what is their first start. I would expect them all of them to go and get more caps. Gatland, the way he was talking about them after the game, suggested that they would, which is great. And Wales got the victory. 2 really nice tries. We won the second half 14-0. It could have been about 40-0. That's how bad England were. So I don't know what your thoughts were on it, mate. I've given kind of my views on Wales. What did you make on it from the England side? Not that you support England, obviously.
Very disappointed. Very disappointed. I think you probably lined this game up pretty well for me and set my expectations. I always get quite excited for some of these summer internationals or pre-World Cup warm-up games, and then you kind of have to be brought back down to reality and that they're not going to be good games. For me, the biggest standout was how poor England were. Now, obviously, this was nothing close to their first side, but I think the official stat in the game was that there were 16 handling errors. I was listening to a different podcast over the weekend that said there were 19 handling errors. I mean, for me, that was the most frustrating part of watching England. Just the amount of turnover ball. I think they gave away something like 22 turnovers. It was just very tough to watch. But to watch. But overall, like I think, like I know there were a lot of people on Twitter saying this is one of the worst games they've watched. People saying that obviously haven't watched a lot of rugby, to be honest. Like this is standard Northern Hemisphere rugby. It's what we were used to. Now, obviously with Ireland, thankfully, and a few other teams, like we are moving away from this. And it just reminded me of the Lions tour and down to South Africa. But I think thankfully rugby's come on since then. But even that, having said that, like I thought it was a pretty intriguing game in terms of excitement. You could tell how much it meant to the Welsh players. So that was very exciting to watch. But overall, it was a decent spectacle. But for people kind of giving out about it online, that's what you expect. Now it does probably shed a light on what we're going to see from England in the World Cup, which is going to be exactly what Steve Brummett did with Leicester. So it's going to be big on defence, big on set piece, and kick pressure, and not playing any rugby from your own from inside your own half. And that's exactly what they did. Now, obviously, their set piece let them down at the weekend, and so too did their handling errors. But again, we just have to bear in mind that this wasn't their first side. So, yeah, looking forward to not rewatching it. We'll put it that way. But I think at the time I wasn't overly as unimpressed as a lot of people were.
Big week this week for Borthwick in no excuses at Twickenham. He's going to put out a stronger team, although rumours are going around on Twitter at the moment that there's going to be players who he's already dropped from the World Cup squad are going to be playing on Saturday because he's got too many injuries and he's 33 and he doesn't want to risk players like he doesn't want to risk Tuilagi. So he's going to be playing potentially Guy Porter, who he's just dropped. We won't go on about it too much, but weird things happening with Borthwick's England at the moment. So exciting. What about some of the other games? So let's talk about Springboks versus Argentina, or Argentina versus Springboks, I should say. So the Boks have put out a bit of a second team in this game, which leads us on to talking about the squad that's been announced today. So first, I'll get your impressions on the game. I watched the highlights after I got back from Cardiff. It seemed like the second half was the only half that was worth watching.
You're dead right. I mean, it was, unfortunately, we'll touch on it later, but it was the kickoff clashed essentially with the Irish game. I mean, it started 10 minutes later, so I only kind of had one eye on the game, but absolutely the second half was when it kind of came to light. And for me, the standout was Manny Lebok. I know a lot of people, like, he did miss a good few kicks in the first half, but he got he got a good few kicks in the second half. He seems like one of those players that's unfazed by making an error.
Yeah.
And also that cross kick that he made to Kane Moody, who obviously just made the World Cup squad, which is brilliant to see, especially as a URC fan. And was just classic Libok. So yeah, I didn't watch a whole lot of the first half. I was definitely distracted by the Irish game, but I think it was as expected.
Yeah. Well, I think with those kind of things, like if your kick is missing easy kicks, I kind of don't panic about that because I think, oh, that's fixable. So next week he'll get them. So I don't think that's reason enough for him to drop. I'm a huge Lebok fan. I think he could be a real rock star of rugby moving forward. He's got everything. He's got the cheekbones, and he's got a bit of X factor about him, which I love. So what do you make of? Obviously, he's going to be the first choice Springbok 10 at the World Cup with Andre Pollard not fit. Also, Lucanio Am not fit. And was it Luke De Jager who's also not fit?
That's right, yeah.
Wow. So what do you make of the Springbok squad then? Are they going to, is it all over for them? Is it curtains for the Boks?
No chance, to be honest. The biggest thing that stands out for me is that scrum half. They've picked four scrum halves.
So we were debating.
Two.
We were debating on the Scoop space that we do. Shout out Scoop if you're listening. Which of the three scrum halves are they going to be? And there was a bit of back and forth, and not everyone agreed. Turns out, easy solution: just take them all, guys. Just take everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody's really worried about the Boks. I mean, it's still a ridiculously strong squad. We've seen the amount of players that they're going to bring over as well as reserves. I wouldn't be worried if I were a Boks fan. Now, I am very curious though about the number 10 decision. So they've brought one specialist 10. which is Lubbock.
Absolutely.
Willemse as the backup 10, I think that's a bit of a risk. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, no, he's not really a 10, is he? He's more of a centre stroke 15. And in the game against Argentina at the weekend, he played 15 with Lubbock at 10. And we had the chat with the South African guys, and they were saying that very much, you got one combination, which is Pollard and Leroux, 10-15, and you got one which is Lubbock and Willemse. But now Willems is down as a 10. So are we going to see Lubbock and Leroux? That seems, it could work. It's just not something that we've seen before. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's really going to affect the box dynamic. It's going to really affect the way they play, because Pollard and Lubbock are not similar, really. I'm sure they can execute a game plan well enough, but but like I say, I'm a huge Lubbock fan, so I can't wait to see him. And whatever it is, Razzie and Jacques Nuneba will come up with a plan. I still think they'll get out of their group.
Yeah, they absolutely will. I think you're right there. Moving on to any of the other big news of the week. So we've talked about the box squad. We've talked about the English game. The Wallabies, are they making progress?
Yes and no. So for me, this was the most Eddie Jones performance we've seen from the Wallabies. They were something like 14-0 up, I want to say, after 10 minutes, which is very Eddie Jones. So other analysts have covered this in the past. Eddie Jones's England team scored the majority of their points in the first quarter of games, and I think there was some mad stat like 10 or 15 games in a row at Twickenham they scored within the first 5 minutes, a try within the first 5 minutes of the game. I think there was another mad one, which is like in 2018, they scored 80% of their points in the first 20 minutes. So it's something ludicrous like that. And I think probably Eddie's logic behind doing that, because it's a very purposeful thing. They run their biggest, most intricate attacking set play off the first opportunity they get to run at it, because teams aren't expecting you to go big early. And I think the reason that Eddie does that is because once you get ahead in Test rugby, it's very, very hard for teams to overhaul you. We see half-time turnarounds of more than a score very rarely. Now, 2 happens this weekend, the France-Scotland game, which we'll touch on in a second, and this one. But other than that, it's very, very rare to see big comebacks in rugby. Unfortunately for Eddie, 17 points isn't enough to beat the All Blacks, especially not in New Zealand. How good is that stadium, by the way? It's on my bucket list to go to Dunedin. Oh my God. So the All Blacks, although it took like a Hollywood last-minute kick for Mo'unga to win it in the 79th minute, the All Blacks had actually taken the lead in that game already by about the 65th minute, 67th minute, and they'd had another 2 tries, I think, on top of that ruled out. So I think the scoreline flatters Australia a little bit. I do think they made progress, but the All Blacks made 15, 14, 13 changes in this game, whereas the Aussies went full strength yet again. I don't know. I wouldn't take much from this game. The Wallabies are making progress, but they're still losing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think as we discussed before, we can easily see them going into this World Cup with five losses from 5 games. So let's move on, though. Let's move on to Scotland and France. That was probably, for me, the game of the weekend. What were your thoughts?
So I didn't get to see this live because I was traveling. Like everybody, I saw the halftime score. Well, first I saw the French lineup and I thought, France have chucked this. They're playing their 3rd team against Scotland. It was Scotland's first choice as well. So I thought, this is going to be a non-event. And all the bloody Scotland fans on Twitter are going to be thinking they're the best because they've beaten France rather than, France under 18s. But then a half-time score, 21-3 to France away from home. Phenomenal. I think I said to you before, mate, it's so weird the way that the French come alive at international level and start running in tries from their own half, because the top 14 ain't like that. People think that the top 14 is all Hollywood rugby. It's like the slowest, most brutal rugby you've ever seen. But then
right behind Pro League.
Yeah. At international level, the guys come alive and there's jouer, and it's amazing. And then they go a man up. Scotland get a man sent off, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is the most humiliating day in Scottish rugby history ever. and then no, and then it all turns around, and the French don't score a point in the second half. I don't know. What did you make of it, mate? You watched it live. What was it like to watch? It must have been bizarre.
It was indeed, but it was classic France. Like they played nothing from their own half, and they, whenever they got the opportunity to counterattack, they did. And oh boy, did they! Um, Scotland, yeah, they're extreme, like classic Scotland. They were like extremely disappointing in the first half, and then whatever Gregor Townsend said at halftime worked, and they came out like a different side. They were highly motivated.
Is it Gregor doing a team talk at halftime, or is it Finn going, sod what he says, I'm going to do my thing? Because that's kind of what happens in the big comeback at Twickenham a few years ago.
That's right, yeah. But apparently for this game it was. So Townsend wasn't happy, obviously, and did have a few words. But also I think we saw the best of Finn. Like even like you might think that since he's captain, he might be a bit under pressure. He might be able to perform as well. But I thought he had a very solid game as usual, and he managed the captaincy very well. He's such a calm player. He always has a smile on his face. Like it's hilarious watching him make an error and then just smile about it and laugh at the opposition. So I thought he managed the game pretty well. And we saw yet another crossfield. He's just gifted at crossfield kicks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a classic like Scottish performance, really poor in the first half and then came out like a different side in the second half and managed to win. But I don't think we need to read too much into it in terms of like that was Scotland's pretty much their first side. It was not France's first side, it's probably the second or third string side. So we'll see what happens this coming weekend. I believe that France might go with the stronger team, and maybe Scotland will rest some players, but we'll watch this space for now. But I don't want to read too much into it, but definitely good for Scotland's confidence. Which probably leads us on to the best game of the weekend, which was Ireland versus Italy.
So I want to ask you this as an Ireland fan, right? Is Ireland versus Italy the most boring game in international rugby?
I get incredibly frustrated to watch. I'm always like obviously I'm Irish and I support Ireland and love when Ireland win, but whenever Ireland are playing Italy, I want to see Italy do well. At least want to see them compete. But unfortunately, Italy weren't at the races, and it was pretty much their first teams. It was their first team, and they struggled. Now, what was pleasing, having watched a good few Italy games up to this point, is that they didn't run as often as they did in other games from their own 22, which is definitely welcome. But when they did, Ireland absolutely targeted them and won a few turnovers. But yeah, I was just really let down by Italy's performance. They had everybody loves the way they play, and they do run with the ball. They do go for the offload. They do throw a lot of passes, but they just, particularly in this game, they didn't hold on to the ball, and they were sloppy in possession. But from an Irish perspective, it was business as usual, wasn't it? I mean, did anybody expect anything else? They stuck to the systems. Jack Rowley had a fantastic game at 10, which is great. He's really pushing Ross Byrne. He's probably the second choice now for Ireland, realistically. So that's definitely a good news story. Jacob Stockdale, his first start for Ireland in about 25 months. Brilliant to see him get a run out and have a solid game.
Got stepped by the Italian 23. His name escapes me, sorry, for one of the tries. Did a lovely in-out on Stockdale.
That's right. Stockdale did hit him, but he went far too high and he basically got handed off. So that won't please Farrell, especially as a former defence coach. But yeah, apart from that, Stockdale did, he made the most meters out of any winger this past weekend. So he did well overall. But yeah, that tackle hopefully won't come back to haunt him in terms of World Cup selection. But yeah, let's leave it there on Ireland versus Scotland, or Ireland versus Italy. It was as expected.
Yeah. So, guys, we will come back and cover the Tier 2 games because we know that's what you guys tune in for, but we've got a separate segment on that slightly later in the show, so stay tuned. Okay, mate, so we're going to do our deep dive this week. I took the first one last week, so it's your turn this week, and your specialist subject is rugby broadcasting. So this is obviously what you set up your Twitter page to deliver to the masses. It is a sorely needed service. The most common reply I see on your stuff that you put up on Twitter when you put the TV guides for the weekend is people going, thank you. This is badly needed. So based on, all your investigation into this space, just how many rugby broadcasters are there?
So at the moment, we're looking at 20 different broadcasters across Ireland and the UK.
That's just Ireland and the UK.
Just Ireland and the UK. Now that does cover women's rugby, men's rugby, club rugby, but obviously like you could add a few more to that. But essentially, we're looking at 20 different broadcasters, and that's it. Like that's when I knew you were going to ask that question. That really just reminds me of why I started the page. Thankfully, I did work for a former a broadcaster, and that's how I got into this. And I've always been a rugby fan, and I've always found it challenging some weekends just to find out, who's showing what and on what channel. Because you have to bear in mind, like it is 20 different broadcasters, but it's not 20 different channels. It could be double that in terms of channels. Like if you look at TNT Sports, they've got four channels, and they also have additional channels.
TNT, formerly BT.
Exactly. And we'll get into that later. So we've got numerous different channels. You've got numerous different streaming platforms. You've got YouTube, you've got RT Player, you've got Viaplay. Now you've got Discovery Plus. And then also overall, you've got a variety of free-to-air coverage. You've got pay TV coverage. You've got streaming coverage. You have pay-per-view coverage, essentially, which is what Premiership Rugby TV is. So for me, like the market it's a fragmented market, and it's difficult essentially to know, where a match is on. And again, it's the main reason I started the guide on Twitter. And yeah, that's where I am at the moment anyway with my account, and I am also starting a website just to make it a bit easier for people. But looking at kind of moving on to where we are now, and is it going to get any clearer, or is it going to be easier to decipher, where games are on?
So there's been like a rugby broadcaster has been kind of mooted a few times. As people talked about it being Amazon maybe coming just showing all rugby. Obviously, we've had Viaplay come in, formerly Premier Sports in the UK, and show all URC and top 14, not all top 14, but some top 14. So are we any closer to that? Because I'm sure a lot of people are desperate just to have a one go-to rugby. This is the rugby channel, and if I want to watch if a rugby match is on, it's on this channel. So is that going to happen?
It's not going to happen anytime soon, as far as I can see. Like look where we are now. So we have BT. It's now TNT Sports. Like the only major difference there is that the BT Sport app is gone. Well, not yet. It's going later on the year, but you can now stream directly from the Discovery Plus app. But again, that's in the UK. So TNT Sports did launch in the Republic of Ireland. But in the Republic of Ireland, the only way to watch TNT Sports is via a Sports Extra subscription, which is available from Sky, it's available from Virgin Media, it's available from Vodafone, it's available from Now TV, which has actually been renamed Now over the last couple of years, which a lot of people don't even know.
No, I still call it Now TV.
Yeah, I think everyone does, to be honest, and it's still nowtv.com. It's not now.com.
It's a bit like how X is still twitter.com, and to get on X, you have to Google Twitter. Because if you just search X, nothing comes up.
No one's going to call it X. So yeah, we've TNT Sports now. So no major differences there really. Yeah, as I was saying, it remains available in Ireland through various broadcasters, but you literally cannot get TNT Sports by itself in Ireland. You have to sign up for a Sports Extra subscription. Now, the good thing about the Sports Extra subscription is that it comes with Premier Sports as well. So it's a little bit, you do get more games compared to people in the UK who have to subscribe to Viaplay and to TNT separately. So yeah, where are we? So that's obviously a major change that we've seen. But we've discussed this in the last pod, so I won't go too much into it. But obviously Viaplay have indicated that they are going to leave the UK. We don't know exactly when. It might be as late as 2025 because that's when their existing agreement with the URC that's when it runs to. So it runs till 2025. So we mightn't see them leave till then. They also obviously Viaplay broadcast the top 14. That apparently there's only about a year left in that contract, so that would be
I'll be gutted if we lose that in the UK.
Yeah, so like at least so we don't really know where we are. So we don't really know where we are in terms of the Viaplay space. So obviously there is a gap there. And I did run a poll recently on Twitter and in terms of who people want to see replace Viaplay as the number one URC broadcaster in the UK. because it's basically Viaplay aren't in Ireland at the moment, and it looks like obviously they won't be launching in Ireland anytime soon. So it kind of does, leave that question as to what's going to happen to the URC rights and the top 14 rights. Personally, so when I ran this poll online, I did ask people who they wanted to see. I gave them the option of Sky, URC TV, TNT Sports, and Amazon. And the majority of people actually chose Amazon. Now, for me, I hate to be negative, but Amazon are never going to. They may. I could be completely wrong, but Amazon's strategy is not to broadcast every single game of a tournament. They don't do it for any tournament in the world whatsoever. What they like to do is to pick up a few games. So you look at the Premier League, they show some games at Christmas, because they want people to buy Amazon Prime, to subscribe, and they obviously want them to spend more money, especially that time of year. If you look at their involvement in rugby at the moment, they're kind of involved in the Autumn Nations series. We actually don't know if they're going to be broadcasting next year though. So it's not within their strategy to broadcast every game. Now, obviously they do get involved. Like they are going to be involved in the Champions League space in the UK very soon. But again, they're only taking a short number of, a small number of games. So we don't know exactly what their overall strategy is, but what we can kind of decipher from their previous agreements is that they do not go for all games. So for me, it is highly unlikely that they would go for this option. And because I think there are something like 151 regular season games in the URC season, like there is no way they're going to broadcast all of those games. And so for any soccer fans listening who might know this, so for anybody based in France, Amazon do actually broadcast the majority of games in League One soccer. So they broadcast from the season that is just about to begin, they're going to broadcast 7 games per week. Now, this is probably one of the biggest deals in the world in terms of the amount of games that they show. And guess what? You do not just, subscribers don't have to, they do have to pay for Amazon Prime, obviously, the membership, but they also have to pay an additional monthly fee on top of that, so you're paying 2 subscriptions. And previously, up until the beginning of the season's just about to begin, that was $12.99. That's actually going up to $14.99. And again, this is on top of what you're paying for your Prime subscription. So what does that tell you? That tells you when they do come into a league and they do broadcast a lot of games, they're actually going to charge you more, because obviously if they're like, we all know, like their strategy is to get people in and to spend money. Like they are a retail business at the end of the day, and they want to get people on buying products. But they're not just going to sell sports rights. Not as far as I can see, just sell sports rights at a loss, because they are going to make a loss unless they charge extra. So for me, for all of those reasons, I don't think Amazon is the answer. I think we might see Amazon pick up a few games, but there's no way, as far as I can see, that they're going to pick up 151 games.
Oh, that's a shame, because Amazon was my choice because it's cheaper, which you just explained it wouldn't be. And it's probably the most accessible out of all of the other options, because so many people already have Amazon Prime for the deliveries and also for watching other shows. That what you say about charging extra with extra games is interesting, because that's something that BT have gotten a lot of stick for. So BT market themselves as the home of English rugby, but you can't watch every single Premiership game for free.
Exactly.
Well, sorry, not for free, but included in your subscription. You have to pay extra so people like Newcastle Falcons fans are paying way more than Saracens fans, for example, to watch their team.
Exactly. And so this is the issue. And it's funny you mentioned that as well. Like for me as well, I don't actually see Amazon as the best way to get your product out there. I mean, a lot of our generation especially would be on Amazon, but there's a generation out there as well, and a lot of rugby fans are quite older, and they mightn't, it's not as if they wouldn't have Amazon, or they wouldn't have a smart TV, or they wouldn't be able to use the app. It's for me, it's all about discoverability. Like, will you know where the game is on? And if the game is on Amazon, is it obvious? Like when you open the Amazon app, it is not
that's
obvious.
Something that came up for the other day, didn't it? For last weekend's games, for the Scotland versus Italy game, and I saw people on Twitter going, "Where's this game? I'm looking on Amazon, and it's not here."
Yeah, exactly. And that for me is another issue. And again, for your casual fan who subscribes to Sky Sports or to TNT Sports, they're sitting down on a Saturday evening, they're flicking 2 channels. They're not going to have that discoverability. They're not just going to stumble across a game that's hidden on the Amazon app. So again, we can talk about this another time, but for me, that's just another reason why I think maybe Amazon isn't the answer yet. I think in the future it could be, and I know that there have been reports that they are working on a sports app, so it will be easier to find their sports content. And for me, yeah, they because they don't have a linear presence as well, I think that is definitely letting them down. Like if they had a linear channel, like if you look at DAZN, that's live in the UK, they actually just recently launched a linear channel on Sky Sports because they're trying to get more viewers. Like we all know that streaming is the future, but they've launched a linear channel. So they've gone the other direction because they want more people watching, and they know that sports fans have Sky Sports, and guess what? They flick through channels, so it's easier to find them.
Yeah,
but just another interesting.
I've spoken to some other fans on other podcasts, and they because for me, I stream everything. Even stuff that's on free to air. I hook my phone up to my Chromecast, which is attached to my TV, and I stream everything. So I love when matches are on YouTube because I can watch it like that. But so I wasn't thinking about maybe the older fan or something, and I've spoken to people who say if it's not on free to air, I will not watch it. I would rather, even a Wales game. So for Welsh fans, like it's obviously a religion in Wales. Even for a Wales game, if it's not on free to air, I can't be bothered to do all the work that is required. I don't want to pay the money, or it's too much effort, or someone is slightly elderly and they then just not au fait with these things, and so those fans are lost, which is a shame because is it fair to say that it's unrealistic for free to air to really broadcast the majority of rugby because it is a niche sport, especially club rugby?
It is, and especially when there are so many games on every weekend. I think for me, what the future of, well, if you look at Ireland at the moment, especially in terms of the URC, I think we've got a really good setup. So you've got your free to air broadcasters broadcasting every single game involving Connacht, Munster, and Leinster. You also have Premier Sports as a pay TV provider showing almost every single game live. Not every game, but almost every single game. And then you also has your URC TV, which is the direct consumer streaming platform that the URC launched when the whole competition was rebranded. And it's really affordable, and it's a very good service, and you get to watch every single game. So I think, like in Ireland, I think they found, like especially the URC has found a really good balance of having a really strong number of games on free to air, still having a lot of games on pay TV, and then having absolutely every game available for those kind of hardcore fans like ourselves who would want to stream every single game and direct to our device. But for the URC in the UK, it'll be really, really interesting to see. Like I think I'm really unsure because obviously if Viaplay are gone, TNT Sports or Sky might pick them up, but we know from experience they're not going to show every game. Will DAZN come in? But DAZN haven't shown an interest in rugby up until this point, so I don't know. So or will they go the URC TV option, which is good for hardcore URC fans, but again, it's not going to get your casual fans in watching, is it?
If they do keep some of the free to air, so in Wales there's 2 free to air options. On the Friday night it's shown by BBC Wales, and then I think Sunday games, or at least one Saturday game, is shown by S4C, which is the Welsh language. So they're both free to air, but obviously you can only get S4C either via iPlayer or if you live in Wales or close to Wales. So that's quite interesting. So that we're talking about affordability there. I think it's quite it being as fragmented as we've talked about it is, and how many different suppliers there are as we talked about. It gets quite scary, doesn't it? Because let's say you're a kid and you get into rugby and say, pick a random player, say George North is your favourite player, right? And you go, I want to watch every game that George North plays. And you go to your parents and you go, Mummy, Daddy, please can you pay for me to get URC coverage? And they look at it and they go, okay, URC in terms of the coverage is more affordable than other broadcasters. So they go, okay. And then guess what? Next week, George North isn't playing the URC, he's playing in the Champions Cup. So you go, oh, right, okay, Mummy, Daddy, please can you get TNT Sports so I can watch him play in the Champions Cup? You go, oh, right, oh, that's way more expensive. Oh, okay, it's your thing. You go, okay, and now George North is playing for the Lions and that's on Sky. Right, right. now I've got to pay for it. Now I've got 3 subscriptions on the go to watch just one player, and now he's playing for Wales, and that's on Amazon. Oh, that's 4 to watch, and it just gets ridiculous. You can find yourself. I think you could easily spend £100 a month watching rugby. Do you think that's fair?
Absolutely. Like in Ireland, the full cost of a Sky Sports subscription is €40. The full cost of the Sports Extra subscription is €34. So you're looking at €74. A lot of people then obviously have if you have a regular, Sky Basic pack, I think currently that's around 43, 40, between 43 and €45. So you're looking at over €100 if you're a traditional TV subscriber. Now, obviously, we do have Now in Ireland that makes it a little bit cheaper. But if you're signing up for Sky Sports and Sports Extra Ireland via Now, that's £74. Although, sorry, no, it's strange. They've priced so. Yeah, it's €40 on Sky Sports and it's €34 for Sports Extra. But on Now it is $38.99 for Sky Sports and $33.99 for Sports Extra, just to make it a little bit more confusing. But yeah, it's absolutely an expensive thing. But I know a lot of people have been talking about, a streaming platform coming in or a rugby channel. I don't see it, because if this is how much it costs for if you look at TNT Sports, but before BT Sports didn't make a profit. And that's how much they were already charging such a high amount. Now, obviously, they've got other sports and it's not just rugby. But you have to kind of do the economics here. And I just don't see a streamer coming in and just buying the rights to Top 14, buying the rights to URC, buying the rights to the Champions Cup, buying the rights to the Gallery. It's not going to happen. And if it does happen, it's going to cost you about £100 a month. That's how I see it. I think it's going to, for the foreseeable future, it's going to remain fragmented. But which moves us on to my final section on this. There are a lot of broadcast agreements that are actually up soon. So obviously, as we kind of touched on, the URC has a variety of different broadcast agreements, but one of them is with BBC Northern Ireland. That was a 3-year deal that they signed in 2021, and that's actually due to expire at the end of next season. You also have the Premiership Cup, the Champions Cup, the Challenge Cup, the Top 14, and the Autumn Internationals. All of those broadcast agreements are ending in 2024. So who knows what the rugby, like, again, all of those could be renewed. Well, we know Viaplay's won't be renewed, but a lot of those, like especially TNT in terms of Champions Cup and the Premiership, you'd expect them to be renewed. But who knows? It could be a different landscape.
Well, they're going to pay less money for the Premiership now, aren't they, with only 10 teams?
Exactly, and they already paid less for the current agreement than they did for the previous one.
Yikes.
So yeah, it's a really interesting space, but for now, I think it's going to remain very fragmented, which is frustrating for fans. But I don't see a viable alternative yet. Obviously that will change eventually. But I think, and just final thing I would say on this, I think Irish fans are in a much better position. Like if you're a Connacht fan, for example, and you just want to watch the URC, you can watch every single Connacht game for free. Obviously if you want to watch them in the Champions Cup, you've got to pay extra, or if you want to watch other teams in the URC and stuff, you have to pay extra. But if you're just, say, a Connacht fan, a Munster fan, or a Leinster fan in Ireland, you can watch all of your URC games involving those teams for free. Whereas obviously if you live in Wales, you do have to subscribe to Viaplay to get every single game, say, that the Ospreys are playing in. But I think we'll leave it there. Yeah, unless you have any other questions on this.
No, fantastic,
this interesting
mate.
topic.
That was really great. I'm sure loads of people have loads of questions. So if you've got any questions for Enda about any of the broadcast details that we've gone over, or something you think we've missed, tweet us or on @therugbypod, or leave a comment down below on our YouTube, and like I promised, we'll answer all of you. If you do want to leave a comment, let us know who's your favourite rugby broadcaster. We all have our favourites, and I've seen you on Twitter. I've seen you moaning about the ones that you don't like either. So let us know down in the comments who's your least favourite rugby broadcaster. Who do you not like? And we'll respond to each and every one of you.
Great stuff, Hugh. So moving on now to our Tier 2 roundup. What games did you get a chance to watch? Highlights of, full games of? Tell me about your Tier 2 experience over the weekend.
So my tier 2 experience over the weekend was extremely frustrating. So we just talked about rugby broadcast deals, and we talked about how many broadcasters there are. None of them were showing any tier 2 rugby this weekend in terms of tier 2 internationals. There were some that were showing the leagues, the club games that were going on. We'll come on to that in a minute. But you could not watch any of the Pacific Nations Cup games in the UK. And I would argue that Fiji versus Japan, which is the first game we'll talk about, was the biggest rugby match of this weekend. It was the deciding game in the Pacific Nations Cup. And it's two nations who will be looking forward to hopefully challenging to get out of their pools in the World Cup. It was a huge game with a lot riding on it. And I was just driven mad that I could not find a stream for it. I saw people who were on Twitter going, where can we find it? Where can we find it? And people giving up and saying, I saw multiple people tweeting, I've given up trying to watch this rugby match. That is a massive failing from World Rugby or the powers that be, in my view. There's people literally, I want to consume your product, I'm trying to consume your product, but I can't. So that was the disappointment. So Fiji Japan wasn't broadcast. Samoa Tonga wasn't broadcast, which was the other Pacific Nations Cup game. Romania USA wasn't broadcast, but even if it was, it clashed with the Wales game. I think it was kicked off at 6 o'clock UK time. That clashed with the Wales game, and then
Romania actually. Sorry to cut across you. Romania. That game actually was. I saw a link. So after the fact, I didn't get a chance to see this, but I saw it pop up on Twitter that Romania Rugby did actually show it live on their YouTube space, but didn't tell anyone. There was no announcement about it. Like there was no big build up to it or anything. Like
Twitter, they didn't say anything.
Yeah, so
because Japan
again,
do promote where they're showing it, but it's not no UK things. It's J Sports, which is the Japanese domestic sports broadcaster, which you can't get.
Yeah, incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, incredibly frustrating. And then obviously Uruguay versus Namibia was the other one that was on, and then Chile versus Argentina 15 was on. Again, no UK broadcaster. If you want to check out the highlights, if you guys have been listening to this and you want to see the highlights of these games, head to our Substack. We've just done a post where we posted the YouTube highlights of every single one of these games, so you can get an idea of what happened, and you can impress your mates at the World Cup saying, that guy's just scored a try. He scored a try in this other game that I watched, and you'll look really clever. But anyway, so here's a rundown of the tier 2 games. So first one, like I said, Japan versus Fiji, 35-12 to Fiji it finished. Fiji crowned Pacific Nations Cup champions, won every game, scored 30 points in every game. Fiji on a crest of a wave, and the scary thing is they started totally different 15s in each of these 3 games as well. So yeah, it was an end-to-end game. Literally, you can imagine Japan versus Fiji. There's a lot throwing the ball around, and it would literally go from one 22 to the other 22, back the other way. Unfortunately, Japan conceded most of the points. They had another red card as well, so Leach got sent off in the first game of the tournament. They had another player sent off for a head-on-head contact in this game as well. Some people have said that was harsh, but yeah, just it's a killer for them. Japan, I'm sorry to say, are not the force they were 4 years ago when they had their home World Cup. They've really seemed to have dipped since then. But yeah, Fiji, they were the way their backs play is so different to every other game. They interchange positions. You know, they name a lineup and you think, hang on a minute, they're playing 6 centers. What's going on here? But they're just so natural. It comes from their sevens backgrounds. As a Wales fan, am I scared of Fiji? I was scared of Fiji already. Now I'm extra scared of Fiji. So we're definitely going to do a deep dive on them at some point in the future. Moving on to the other game, Samoa thumped Tonga, 34-9. I don't know, man. Were you expecting more from Tonga? Because there was a whole lot more hype around them based on them getting all their All-Blacks back. They won one game, which I think was against. Oh no, sorry, no, they didn't. They won one game against Australia A, which wasn't part of the Pacific Nations, and then they lost all their Pacific Nations Cup games and didn't really look like winning any of them. So I don't know. Did you expect more from Tonga at this stage?
I did, but I suppose when you look at the players they have coming in, they haven't had an awful lot of time together. And like if you look at Ireland at the moment, where are they this week? Like I know, some of the home nations, we'll call them, are playing this come weekend. Ireland are over in the Algarve. Look, we were all bombarded with photos of Johnny Sexton swimming in the sea
Yeah. I
today.
saw a
So
photo of Peter O'Malley fighting a shark.
exactly, yeah. So I
Definitely
mean,
wasn't photoshopped.
that's the amount of time. Like Ireland have enough time to basically. Now I know they're obviously going to play. They are going to be training, and the word in the street is that Sexton's going to be playing against a Portuguese side in a training game, which is really interesting. But it just shows like the amount of prep that they have and that they're able to go. Like all the sound beats coming out of Ireland is that they're having a really good time. There's a lot of family time. The family are being invited, and to spend a lot of time with the players and everything, and with the management. So for me, it's that's probably why Tonga aren't performing, because they haven't had that cohesion. They haven't had that time together. Um, Maybe that will change during the next cycle, but I'd say for me that's probably the main reason they haven't enough time together.
Yeah, I think you're probably right then. So moving on then to Romania versus USA. So this was the shock result of the weekend. So USA didn't qualify for the World Cup for the first time in a while. They haven't qualified. They got beaten by Chile. They played Romania. Romania have qualified for the World Cup, but USA won 31-17 in Romania. And if you check out the highlights on the Substack for this one, guys, Rugby Z did the highlights for it on YouTube. You can go direct to them if you like. USA played amazing stuff. They went 31-0 up, and it was really nice rugby they were playing. Really intricate, really surprisingly high level. Sometimes these tier 2 games can be quite amateurish, but the USA guys really put Romania to the sword. So yeah, not what Romania were looking for. A little bit embarrassing, to be honest. So they'll be looking for a big improvement when they play. I think they play Georgia in their next warm-up.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. They'll be looking for a tune-up, because Romania have launched their kit this week and it's beautiful, and I don't want to see it all bloody battered at the World Cup. So that's that one. Moving on to the next one, Uruguay versus Namibia. No highlights knocking around for this one. Sorry, guys, couldn't find it anywhere. But Uruguay won 26-18. Flatters Namibia a little bit, that one, because they scored a try right at the end to put some respectability on the scoreboard. I think Uruguay were quite comfortable, and I still back Uruguay as kind of the strongest emerging nation. I think these two are in the group together at the World Cup, actually. So this was kind of a dress rehearsal for that, and I back Uruguay to win that again as well. And then the final one that we'll talk about from the international games was Chile versus Argentina 15. So this is like not even an Argentinian B team. This is like an invitational Argentinian team, and they beat Chile 40 points to 13. Not great. The game was delayed as well, so this was the only international game technically to take place on Sunday UK time, because it was delayed until midnight. Don't know why. Maybe there was a dog on the pitch. Let's say there was a dog on the pitch. And yeah, a very comfortable win for Argentinian invitee players. Let's hope it was a bad day at the office for Chile, because we want to see big things from them at the World Cup. And yeah, not what we want to be seeing them going down as easy as that, especially at home. Anyway, so moving on from the international games, mate, you've been getting everyone excited about NPC. So tell us again what NPC is, and what did you make of the first weekend of the action?
So essentially, NPC, the National Provincial Championship, is New Zealand's. It's the tier below Super Rugby, so it's a lot of the feeder teams to the Super Rugby teams. I absolutely loved the first round. Now there were only 2 games broadcast on Sky, but I think you touched on this on Twitter. The quality of the broadcast was actually really good. So like,
it was
it's
ridiculously good. It's like the quality of the broadcasting is better than most international games. Like, what
and they
was yours again,
co-coms,
mate?
and
What
then
was
they
it
had somebody
called?
on the sideline, and they had multiple different camera angles. It's not
So
kind
many
of like, I
camera
know
angles.
exactly. Like I know we're going to touch on the Scottish Super Six in a minute. Now it's not bad, but you might see 1 or 2 camera angles. But the NPC, it's like you're watching a Super Rugby game, and that's what I really liked about it. And the commentators know everything about everybody playing as well. So and yeah, I have to say I've really enjoyed that. Did you get a chance to watch the games?
I watched all of the one on Friday, because it's on in the morning. I love rugby in the morning, so I watched the Friday game. and enjoyed that. And then I watched some of the Saturday game. I missed some of it because we were getting ready to go to Cardiff and things. But yeah, I agreed. I'm definitely going to tune into it moving forward. I'm just going to see if I can get the table up here. So bear with me a second.
It just adds to it
So
when you can just tell that the broadcasters. So obviously it's Sky are running the feed from Sky in New Zealand, but it's still, it makes all that difference when it's just a good quality. Like I don't know if you, I know you didn't get a chance to watch it, but the quality of the broadcast from the South African Argentina game was appalling. Like for essentially the entire first half, you couldn't hear any comms.
oh my God.
And this was across the board. So the same thing happened to people watching it on, Stan Sports in Australia, because obviously there's a single feed coming from Argentina, but we couldn't hear any comms for the first half. But just the contrast was unbelievable.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got the table here. So Canterbury are currently top after one game with a points difference of 32. So it's a big win for them. And then Northland are bottom, obviously, so that's who they beat. And then the next biggest win was from Wellington. They currently sit fifth on the table. They beat Manawatu. So tune in.
High scoring games.
High scoring
if you want
games.
to see tries, that's what I like about their high scoring games. And this past weekend, we had two former Irish players involved. Sean Reedy, who used to play for Ulster and who's capped by Ireland, and also Michael Bent, as I mentioned on the last pod, was also playing, and he was playing for Taranaki.
Yeah, and a lot of people in Welsh rugby have been concerned about Tame Plumtree coming in, having only played for Auckland in this competition. Based on what we've seen, we'd say, don't worry about it, guys. It's a good level. It is a good level, and Tame did great when he came off the bench against England. So, yeah, if you want to see where the stars of the future are coming from, tune in, because it doesn't clash with anything. So you can stick it on, and you're not missing anything else.
No excuses.
You're still working. Anyway. Right, so that takes us on to, speaking of the future, this is a good segue. The Scottish Super Six, and it was the first ever game for the Future 15. Well, not the first ever, second ever, but the first proper one, where they played Boroughmere Bears. And if you want to talk Tri-Fests, mate, this was a Tri-Fest. This was streamed on YouTube. You can catch all this on Scotland's Rugby YouTube. It finished 59-36 to the Bears. It was 9 tries to 6. So there's a Tri-Fest for you. Like you say, a little bit more amateurs, a bit mean, but less high-end production, a couple of camera angles and things. But at the moment, it's the only rugby that's played on a Friday night. So if you want to settle down, if you can cast to your TV, this is the only option that you've got, and it is great. So it wasn't just this game that was a Tri-Fest. So in the 3 games, there was 34 tries. 4 of those went to Allen, the hooker for Bears. So obviously their rolling ball was going quite well. So Watsonians currently sit top of the table after only 2 rounds of games. We'll be keeping a close tabs on this one, and we might even have a deep dive on it coming up. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
So moving on now to the week of rugby ahead. What's coming up on your TV screens? Well, so we're recording this pod on a Tuesday. If we get it out as planned this evening or tomorrow morning, it is worth bearing in mind that there is NPC action tomorrow, Wednesday at 8:05 a.m. with Northland playing Taranaki.
Midweek rugby.
Exactly. If you're looking for that midweek rugby fix, Sky Sports Arena has you sorted. Tomorrow morning, which is good to see as well, though. So there are actually 3 games in total of NPC on this weekend. Obviously, this past weekend we only had 2 games, so this weekend we have 3. The other 2 are on at the traditional times you'd expect in Sky. So Counties Manukau are playing Hawke's Bay on Friday at 8:35 a.m. on Sky Sports Action, and then on Saturday, Tasman are playing Auckland at 8:05, and that's also on Sky Sports Action. And obviously, all those games are streaming on Now as well. What else is on this weekend? So, as you mentioned, the Super 6 continues. So, Watsonians are actually playing Boroughmere, and that is on Friday evening at 25 to 8. So tune in if you can. And then also on Saturday, Harriets are playing Stirling at 5 o'clock, and that is going to be on Scottish Rugby's YouTube, and that'll also be on the BBC iPlayer. What else is on? So kicking off this weekend is also the Women's Interprovincial Championship in Ireland. So we're going to have more YouTube action here. So Ulster are playing Munster women. That game's on at 3 o'clock on Saturday. That will be streamed
That's
on
great, 'cause
TG.
you don't see much women's club rugby streams, especially not for free. So fantastic.
Exactly, yeah. So that's going to be on TG Cahir or TG4 for our UK friends. So that's going to be on their YouTube channel. Also, I believe BBC Northern Ireland are going to be showing that game. I believe it's going to be on the BBC iPlayer. And more to come on that later on the week. If you keep an eye out on my Twitter page, I'll confirm. But I know that BBC Northern Ireland are going to be showing the game. I'm just not sure where, but more than likely it'll be streamed either on the BBC Northern Ireland's website or else on the BBC iPlayer. The other interprovincial championship game is Connacht women are playing Leinster women, and that's at 5:15. And again, that's going to be available. Connacht versus Leinster, and that's at 5:15. Again, that will be on TG Cahir's YouTube channel. What else? So there are also 2 international friendlies or Summer Nation series or whatever the hell you want to call them. England are playing Wales, so that's on at 5:30 on Saturday. That will be on Amazon in the UK and on Premier Sports in Ireland, and also France will be playing Scotland at 8:05 on Saturday as well. And that game will be shown on Amazon the UK and on Premier Sports in Ireland. So that is the last thing I want to mention. And also, actually, I'll touch one more thing. Romania are playing Georgia at 4 o'clock on Saturday. I have reached out to the Romanian Rugby Union. I actually emailed them. I used Google Translate, so I sent them an email in Romanian asking them if they will be showing this game on
This is
YouTube.
international journalism, ladies and gentlemen.
And they have not responded. I don't expect them to. But again, watch this space. I wouldn't be surprised if that game is on Romania Rugby's YouTube channel. But again, no confirmation of that. But keep an eye out on my Twitter, and I'll be sure to let you guys know. So that brings us to the end. Listen, thanks a million for everybody for tuning in. Hugh, any final words?
No, guys, just smash the subscribe, get into the comments, leave us the reviews. We're desperate to grow. We're desperate to bring all of the obscure rugby to all of the people. And you can really help us by doing that. And thank you so much for being on board with us. All of you guys who have joined us at this early stage, I know all of your names and I will remember you forever. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. There we go. My computer's at 4%, so it always just slows down so much. Brilliant. That was great.
That was fantastic, mate.